Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith will be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our Adam Bernstein is getting ready to track the rocket and do some still photography as well. The photographer, Michael Kane, may also be shooting with us today, or maybe popping into the live chat with the moderator crowbar icon next to his name. If you see him, be sure to say hello. Nevertheless, you can always follow the fellows over on X, formerly Twitter. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. Adam is at ABurn NYC. While there, you can follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We're also on Threads as well as Facebook if you yourself are not on X. We'll have support for this launch in addition from our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Currently T minus 56 minutes, 25 seconds and counting to the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket there at pad 39A, getting ready to launch the Korea Sat 6A mission. This is a communications satellite being launched on behalf of the KT Sat Corporation Limited. This is a satellite service provider in South Korea. This satellite manufactured by Thales Alenia Space. We'll talk a little bit more about the spacecraft on board as we get a little closer to launch. It's a beautiful day out on the water here and around Brevard County, also known as Florida Space Coast. You see that sailboat cruising by. We'll note at the top of the broadcast, of course, here in the United States, it is also Veterans Day. So lots of folks enjoying the day off today, including some of you who are in the area and may be lucky enough to catch what SpaceX hopes to be a double launch day. Not only do they have this Falcon 9 at Pad 39A, but also the rocket over at Pad 40, which will be launching another batch of Starlink satellites up to low Earth orbit. That's coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. SpaceX was intending to launch that mission yesterday, but according to the company, had to stand down due to poor recovery weather for the booster. Being this is Veterans Day, I want to take a moment to express our thanks from Spaceflight Now to all those who've served our country. We certainly appreciate your service, and we thank you for being with us on this Veterans Day. Take a part of your day to be with us to see one, if not perhaps two, Falcon 9 rockets launch from Florida's Space Coast. Here's a live look at the Falcon 9 over at Pad 40, getting ready to launch later on this afternoon. 24 Starlink satellites on board this particular Falcon flight, tying the record for the most of the V2 mini variety of Starlinks that have launched. SpaceX did launch a batch of 24 once before, but then went back to launching 23 Starlink satellites thereafter until today. Well, potentially today, if all goes well with flight preparations for this mission, Starlink 6-69. Of course, keep tabs on this rocket here and keep you apprised of its status. You can always find the latest over on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Just head over to the launch schedule tab. Back here at pad 39A, of course, is where this first Falcon is set to fly. Departure time, targeting a T0 liftoff at 12:07 p.m. Eastern. It's 17:07 UTC for those joining around the world. As you're settling on in for our live launch coverage, certainly appreciate the more than 1,200 of you who are here with us this now late morning. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us, allow the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this stream to more folks as we continue on through the count. Also want to thank our moderators in the live chat at present. To see Callisti Lee joining us right now, and we'll keep our eyes out for any other mod. Actually, I see Rusty Shackelford is also hanging out with us today. Good to see you both. And if any of the other mods happen to make their way in, be sure to give them a big old hello. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Michael LTNV, The Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch, Angela Kaggle, Drew P. Gambino, Jersey Jen, Butterfly, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all of our launch liftoff moments here in 4K. As we step on through the count, we'll be shouting at those who become new channel members or upgrade their channel membership, as that is a big way to support what we do here at Spaceflight Now in our ongoing effort to bring you the very latest in space coverage, as well as, of course, live coverage of all the launches that happen from Florida's Space Coast, as well as over in California. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about the mission here today or other happenings in the realm of space, or just want to offer a little bit of support and some kind words, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we press on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And that is always greatly appreciated. And as a quick update, SpaceX has adjusted the launch time for this mission today. New T0 is now 12:22 p.m. 12:22 p.m. Eastern. That is 17:22 UTC. Now, this is a 4-hour window for this mission, so as long as SpaceX has not begun fueling its Falcon 9 rocket here at Launch Complex 39A, they do have the ability to push back further into their launch window. However, once they do begin fueling, they are committing to that T0 time, since SpaceX uses a load and go style of fueling. So with the new time adjustment, we are now looking at T minus 1 hour, 3 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. Time now currently T minus 1 hour, 37 minutes or 37 seconds and counting. Did have a T0 adjustment, but fortunately not by quite that much. If you are just joining us, though, the new T0 of this mission is now 12:22 p.m. Eastern. 12:22 p.m. Eastern, that is 17:22 UTC. Again, SpaceX does have a 4 hour launch window with this mission, same as with the forthcoming Starlink launch from Pad 40 later on today. Notably, this Falcon 9 rocket that's launching this first mission, KoreaSat 6A, is going to be lifting off for a 23rd time. This will make it tied for launch leaders with boosters B1061 and 1062, both of which are no longer flying. A T minus 58 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. Coming into today's launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 70% chance of favorable weather for this launch of the KoreaSat 6A mission. Among the things that they are monitoring, of course, among them is not the booster recovery zone weather. And that's because this Falcon 9 rocket is performing what's known as an RTLS landing or a return to landing site. Following stage separation, the first stage booster B1067 will perform a flip maneuver, a boost back burn, and touchdown over at landing zone 1 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. If that's successful, it will be a notable achievement for SpaceX. They have launched booster 23 times now, twice before, but if successful with the landing, this would be the first time that they've actually successfully landed a booster on its 23rd jaunt to space and back. You may recall that B1061, which was the more recently flown of the two previous launch leaders, that was expended intentionally after launching the European Space Agency's Hera spacecraft. Spacecraft headed off to go examine the crime scene, if you will, as some folks involved with the mission described it, from when the DART spacecraft from NASA impacted Didymos, part of the Didymos Dimorphos binary asteroid system. Meanwhile, B1062 was not intentionally expended. SpaceX very much wanted that booster back. However, it failed to safely land on the SpaceX drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas after it launched on the August 28th Starlink 8-6 mission. So SpaceX looking to prove its rocket booster capabilities with a safe landing of this mission. We will see if they are successful over at LZ1. The booster landing, as far as the timeline is concerned, just so you know when to expect that. It's coming up just a hair after the 8-minute mark. And even though the KoreaSat 6A satellite is being deployed to a geostationary transfer orbit here, it will be deployed from the Falcon 9's upper stage just a little more than 30 minutes after liftoff from the pad here. So a fairly short mission out to a for a geostationary payload. Now T minus 54 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Some viewers with sharp hearing may have heard an announcement about uh, arm swing that was being alerted to. May have noticed from being over at Launchpad Live that there currently isn't, of course, the mobile launcher out at Launch Complex 39B. It's back in the Vehicle Assembly Building, or the VAB. They are doing some additional swing arm tests inside the VAB today, so been hearing some periodic call outs for clearance ahead of those swing arm tests. So if you do happen to hear that as we go on through the broadcast, that is our mic picking up the loudspeaker announcements from the activity inside the Vehicle Assembly Building. Currently T minus 52 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. As we are cruising on through the count, let's go ahead and talk about some of the milestones that are coming up for SpaceX as they proceed towards the hopeful liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket in a little more than 50 minutes from now. The countdown, of course, starts with the SpaceX launch director giving the go-ahead for the start of Propload. SpaceX does their poll electronically. They do have the ability to take it a little bit ahead of time if they feel like they're in a good position, but nominally speaking, it comes up at about T minus 38 minutes. Once that go-ahead is given, propellant load begins at T minus 35 minutes. Loading of RP1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen starts flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. About 5 minutes after that, they begin loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same comes up on the second stage about 4 or so minutes after that. T minus 23 minutes is when the loading of RP1 on the second stage wraps up. T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the Strongback chill down process begins. It's the point in which SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. We see it visually manifest as the so-called big vent at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. And then, of course, aforementioned second stage LOX load begins at T minus 16 minutes. Moving right along, the engine chill down sequence gets underway T minus 7 minutes. It's when they flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. It helps protect those 9 Merlin engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. T minus 6 minutes, the first stage kerosene tank is full. And at T minus 4.5 minutes is when the Strongback retract sequence begins. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, the Strongback, reclines back from the rocket about 1.5 degrees away from the vehicle. It stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute or so later. At that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, when we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, that means control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will issue their go for launch at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite, command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Coming up at 12:22 p.m. Eastern, 17:22 UTC. In other words, in T minus 48 minutes and 35 seconds. At this point, we are now about 10.5 minutes away from the nominal point at which SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load. SpaceX continuing to make its way through its planned launches for the year, of course, ramping up their cadence once again. Things will start to really pick up now that there are no more planned launches of the Dragon spacecraft, either cargo or crew, that are left on the schedule. That means the long lead up times that are needed on pad 39A and I suppose now also over at pad 40 will no longer be a hindrance to SpaceX's goal of launching on average about once every 2 days. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a brisk schedule, I'll phrase it like that. Of course, today is one of those days, being that we have this launch in the late morning, early afternoon, and then looking forward to Starlink 6-69 later on today. Looking down the road a little bit further, we do have potentially, if all goes well, with the Starlink launch this afternoon, we have Starlink 6-68 on tap for the 13th, so coming up on Wednesday. That said, given the 1 day slip of the Starlink 6-69 mission, don't be overly surprised if you see the Starlink 6-68 mission push off to Thursday as opposed to Wednesday. Again, you can always find the latest information that we have confirmed over on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Just click the launch schedule tab. Now T minus 38 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. If all is continuing on track with the current T0 time of 12:22 p.m. Eastern, and SpaceX will have given the go-ahead for the start of fueling right about now, or perhaps just in the very near past. The company did tweet out that they are tracking the T0 time of 12:22 p.m. Eastern, so certainly a good indication that they are on track. We'll keep watch for signs of fueling. We're now T minus 33 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX should be underway on fueling their Falcon 9 rocket, assuming all is continuing to move along on track for a 12:22 p.m. departure time. Of course, that process will start with the loading of RP1 or rocket grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, as well as liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Now currently T minus 32 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. We're punched in close on the base of the Falcon 9 rocket here. Unfortunately, the lighting conditions are not doing us any favors, but we're looking to see signs of fueling. And if you look very closely, just above where the strong backer or the transporter erector starts to taper in, you can just barely make out what is the beginnings of a frost line as the liquid oxygen appears to be flowing onto the first stage tanks. So, by all visual accounts, SpaceX is now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket in preparation for a launch coming up in just a little more than 30 minutes. As SpaceX is now getting into fueling, and we've got about 30-ish minutes left on the clock before a planned liftoff. I want to thank the more than 4,200 of you who are joining with us live this afternoon, or I guess still technically late morning here on the East Coast. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we continue on. Those curious about the payload of the KoreaSat 6A mission, this is an artist rendering of the satellite in geostationary Earth orbit provided by Palislenia Space, the satellite manufacturer for KoreaSat 6A. This particular satellite is designed to replace the KoreaSat 6 satellite at the 116 degrees east position. The satellite built on Thales Alenia Space's Spacebus 4000 B2 satellite bus platform. It includes 6 broadcast satellite service or BSS transponders, along with 20 fixed satellite service transponders. Is a communications satellite that is designed to last for 15 years once it reaches its orbital destination and performs all of its operational checkouts ahead of entering service. KoreaSat 6, for those curious, was launched back in December of 2010. It is the oldest of the KoreaSat satellites in the KT-SAT 4 satellite constellation that, as of right now, includes KoreaSat 7, also at the 116-degree east position, launched back in May 2017. KoreaSat 5A, launched in October of 2017 at the 113 degrees east position. That was actually also launched by SpaceX. Rounding out the quartet is KoreaSat 8, launched back in February of 2014. KoreaSats 7, 6, and 8 were all launched by Arianespace. Following launch, the satellite will be deployed about 34 minutes after liftoff. Now T minus 28 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the booster that's supporting this mission, which is tail number B1067, going for its 23rd launch, and if successful, will be a record 23rd landing. So while we have some time before the so-called big vent, let's go ahead and give you the rundown of its launch history before it goes ahead and continues to cement its role as the currently still flying flight leader for SpaceX's first stage boosters. First took off back in June of 2021. That was its first flight, supporting a mission to the International Space Station, launching the Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-22 mission. That was followed up by another trip to the space station, this time supporting the 4 astronauts of NASA's Crew 3 mission, sending up Crew Dragon Endurance to the ISS, lifting off on November 11th, 2021. Its last mission of that year was the Turksat 5B satellite, lifting off on December 19th of that year. Moving on to 2022, it launched another batch of astronauts, Crew 4, launching on the most recent Dragon to enter the fleet, and actually the Crew Dragon currently docked to the International Space Station. That is Crew Dragon Freedom. That was followed up by its fourth and most recent space station supporting mission, CRS-25, launching on July 14th of 22. Its first batch of Starlink satellites were launched on September 19th of that year, Starlink 4-34. That was followed up by the Hotbird 13G satellite mission, sent up on behalf of Eutelsat. Next up to bat was O3B mPOWER satellites for 1 and 2, launching on December 16th. Moving on to 2023, we've got a run of Starlink satellites. First, Starlink 5-2 on January 26th. Starlink 5-5 on March 24th, and 5-9 on May 14th. That was followed up by a satellite for the Indonesian satellite telecommunications company PSN, satellite known as Satria, lifting off on June 18th, 2023. Back to Starlink land we go for a minute here. We've got 6-10 on August 17th, 6-22 on October 13th, 6-29 on November 22nd, and 6-35 on January 7th coming into this year. That was followed up by the Telkomsat Mariputa 2 mission, lifting off on February 20th. Back to Starlinks we go. 6-45 on March 31st, 6-55 on May 3rd, 8-5 on June 5th, 8-3 on August 10th, and most recently, a pair of Galileo satellites for the European Commission, the equivalent of the United States GPS constellation, the Galileo FM-26 and FM-32 satellites, launched on September 18th of this year. 22 missions so far, 23rd on deck. Looking for a liftoff in 23 minutes and 56 seconds. A T minus 22 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. We're a little less than 2 minutes away from the so-called big vent. Of course, the chill down process will technically get underway at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, but we don't see visual evidence of that till about 30 seconds after. Now T minus 20 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. You can see the big vent now underway here. SpaceX conditions the feed lines at the Strongback or the transporter erector prior to second stage liquid oxygen load coming up at T minus 16 minutes. Now T minus 17 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Got just about a minute left on the big vent before this process wraps up and they turn to second stage LOX load. As we watch the big vent begin to wrap up here at Pad 39A, want to issue a reminder for all of those who are in the Central Florida area, especially those here in Brevard County, that with this mission comes an RTLS landing. So the Falcon 9 first stage booster is intending to come back for a land landing over at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And with it will come a sonic boom as it comes back through the atmosphere. So if you have some friends or family in the area, you may want to shoot them a text real quick if they're not aware that this launch is coming up in a little more than 16 minutes. If you happen to catch some views of the Falcon 9, either as it's lifting off or as the booster's coming back, we'd love to see what you're able to come up with. Be sure to tag us on Facebook or X or Threads. Always great to see what people are able to capture from their vantage point. We're now T minus 15 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting. At this point, with the big vent wrapped up, SpaceX has begun the last of the big fueling milestones, that being the loading of RP-1 or rocket grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's second stage. Now T minus 12 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Because this is a customer mission, we are getting some early pad views of the Falcon 9 rocket, which you can see here in the big box. As a quick note of housekeeping here, you'll notice there's a slight difference between the countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen versus what you're seeing in the big box. Our countdown clock in the upper right is in real time. What's coming in from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our call outs in real time until our views come exclusively from the Falcon 9's onboard cameras. Just listening into the SpaceX commentator for a moment. She confirms that the rocket is healthy, payload is in good shape, and the range is ready to support. Talking about the Falcon 9 rocket itself, vehicle is 229 feet tall or 70 meters, has diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Start from the top and go to the bottom. Payload fairings are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. Fairing halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange following stage separation using the recovery vessel. Bob, I believe, is on deck today. SpaceX confirms that each of the fairing halves that are flying today are flying for a fourth time. And a quick correction, Doug is the recovery vessel that is being used to support fairing recoveries. Falcon 9 second stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine, known as a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,000 pounds of thrust. It'll be fired just once before deployment of the CuriosSat 6A satellite. Moving on down beneath the second stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. There's titanium winglets that provide stability and steering as the Falcon 9's first stage booster comes back down towards landing zone 1. The top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. Taking a live look now at landing zone 1, where B-1067 is intending to touch down. The base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster are 9 Merlin engines, which produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust, burning a combination of rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen. Nice look from the crew access tower looking down at the payload fairings as well as the transporter erector from this vantage point to the right of the rocket. You can see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings that will open up starting a little bit after 4.5 minutes before liftoff. Shortly, we'll be getting a promotional video. This from KT Sat, taking a look at their fleet and showing an emphasis on the CuriosSat 6A satellite. That's, of course, launching in now just a little less than 8.5 minutes. Unfortunately, because this promotional video does include music that we don't know if that's copyright or not, we unfortunately can't share this audio with you, but thankfully there are subtitles so you can read along with what this gentleman is saying. It's, of course, just a broad overview of KT-SAT's on-orbit capabilities. Now, T-minus 6 minutes, 58 seconds and counting. At this point, the engine chill down sequence is underway on the Falcon 9's first stage. They're flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, which will help protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence.
Space has really been looking forward to this launch. And our relationship with our customer KTSat is very special to us. We are extremely proud to provide our long-standing partner, KTSat, with a state-of-the-art satellite. CoreSat 6A will ensure KTSat's ability to provide the highest quality satellite services to its customer over the long term and achieve a sustainable growth in KTSat's satellite business in fixed and broadcasting services. CoreSat 6A will also improve the availability and reliability of CAS, the Korea Augmentation Satellite System, placing Korea at the forefront of secure positioning and navigation performance for air traffic. CoreSat 6A is the fifth satellite to be built by Thales Alenia Space for KTSat, and we are proud to play such an important role in Korea's satellite communication capacity. It is the outcome of a great teamwork with KTSat. I would like to extend my congratulations to everyone who has worked so hard to make today's event happen. And I would like to thank KTSat for their continuous trust in Thales Alenia Space.
Of course, some words there from Thales Alenia Space, the satellite manufacturer of the CoreSat 6A satellite. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. We are coming up on the Strongback retract sequence here in just a moment. Just to the call that the process is just about to get underway. As we are preparing to see the clamp arms opening up and the Strongback retract, do want to thank Sulfur for Lunch for marking 3 months with us as a channel member. Appreciate you, Sulfur, who says, "Thank you for being my silver lining." That's very kind of you to say. We're happy to be the bright spot in anyone's day. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Clamp arms are opening up and the Strongback just beginning to move away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Again, it reclines about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, just a slight lean back here. Pulls back in a much more rapid fashion when we're hitting the point of liftoff. Also want to thank Rodent, no last name, for marking 4 months as a channel member with us, who notes that it is going to be a busy launch month, and that is a very true statement here. Now 3 minutes and counting. First stage lock load should be concluded. Just waiting for that call out.
We should be hearing the call out for lock load completion on stage 1.
Stage 1 lock load complete.
And there's that call.
Heard the call a little bit later. We're now waiting for stage 2 call out to come. Now T-minus 2 minutes and counting. Standing by for the call out for second stage lock load being complete. We're seeing those ground gas close out, so presumably that has come. We're just waiting for the audible call on that.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
And with that, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. They are purging the remaining locks from the feed lines there. That is the ground gas closeouts event you're seeing on your screen. See a couple folks gathering to catch this launch in the bottom left-hand corner of this vantage point here at the press lawn. Now a little more than a minute to go. I want to quickly thank our Byler for a $5 super chat saying this is the first launch I've ever watched. And you picked a pretty day for it. Now 1 minute. Listening for the final go for launch from the SpaceX launch director.
Falcon 9 is the startup.
40 seconds.
LB, go for launch.
And with that final go for launch, we are now less than 30 seconds away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the KoreaSat 6A mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Quickly by fairing separation.
Now T plus 2 minutes, 45 seconds. Good progress on the Falcon flight so far. We're watching the glow of the boost back burn here. The Falcon 9 first stage booster making its way back down towards LZ1, attempting to make its 23rd booster landing.
Some awesome views on this.
About to see payload fairing separation. the conclusion of the boost back shutdown. Now looking at some onboard camera views from the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Coming up, the next milestone here is at T plus 6 minutes and 28 seconds is when the first stage entry burn should begin. Good call that the Falcon 9 first and second stages are following nominal trajectory. Coming up on the 5th minute of this mission so far. Everything moving along nominally with this flight. Still got good eyes on that first stage booster. Those periodic puffs that you're seeing are the cold gas thrusters as the booster is adjusting its attitude, making its way back down towards the landing zone 1 pad over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. If successful, this will be the first time SpaceX has been able to recover a booster following a 23rd flight. Did not make an attempt to recover B-1061, and SpaceX lost B-1062 when it attempted to land on the drone ship a shortfall of gravitas following the launch of Starlink 8-6 back on August 28th. So SpaceX looks to certify its boosters for up to 40 flights. Today is an important milestone in proving that they can continue pushing the capabilities of their Falcon 9 first stage boosters. Coming up on the start of the entry burn here. Less than 20 seconds now. Falcon 9 first stage booster will use 3 of its 9 Merlin 1T engines for this entry burn. Standing by for ignition. And there you see the start of the entry burn. You see our tracking shot here. Entry burn now concluded. We're coming up on the landing burn now in less than a minute, coming up at roughly T plus 7 minutes and 41 seconds. Great views of the booster as it makes its way back down. This view coming from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Coming up on the start of the landing burn here momentarily. A little tricky to track as the clouds are kind of obscuring things here, but got the views back. And with a good touchdown, it appears, SpaceX has notched its first 23rd booster landing. And here you see from the SpaceX's cameras. Great view here from LZ1. Call out for a nominal parking orbit for the Falcon 9's upper stage. Take a look at some of the telemetry data here. Taking a look now out at stage 2, which is that little white dot heading out over the Atlantic Ocean. So, contrary to the published timeline for this mission, which indicated that there was a single burn of the upper stage, which did seem odd given the destination for this payload, there will be a second burn of the upper stage at about T plus 28 minutes prior to the KoreaSat 6A satellite being deployed, T plus 34 minutes and 35 seconds, releasing it into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. Again, this satellite heading out to the 116 degrees east position to help augment the rest of the satellite fleet for the company KT Sat Corporation Limited. So far, a nominal mission with this flight of the KoreaSat 6A satellite. Good live picture here of the first stage booster. Again, an important milestone notched for SpaceX today, landing a booster for a 23rd time successfully for the first time. Hopefully they'll be able to replicate this success with a drone ship landing as well. As we are tracking the progress of the upper stage, again, currently in a coast phase right now, want to go ahead and pop back over to our live chat. Thank a few more folks for your support this afternoon. Want to thank Ceaseless1, great handle, for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ceaseless. The Russian Floof Cat, marking 5 months with us as a channel member, is coming in just before liftoff, saying punch it. Super Tech Boy with a $2 super chat, going to my, as they describe it, undisclosed energy drink fund. Hashtag not sponsored. We really should look into seeing if we can get a sponsorship from, well, I'll not name names unless or until we can get a sponsorship deal, but perhaps something to look to in the background in between launches here. Our thanks as well to DCNC for a £5 super chat saying 23, baby. Woo! Of course, a nod to the booster B1067 making its 23rd booster landing. And thanks as well to Maxwell Crazy Cat for a $2 super chat saying thanks again. Beautiful landing. Also want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, Chuck Close, with a $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck, for supporting us at that level. Good to see you this afternoon. Also, hello to Aussie Space Girl for joining us, one of our wonderful moderators, checking in with Callistia Lee and Rusty Shackelford. Now T plus 15 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. Our photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, working on some of the photos they were able to capture of this Falcon 9 launch and booster landing. We'll go ahead and show those to you as soon as they're ready to be brought into our system here. In the meantime, of course, SpaceX now with a good liftoff of the KoreaSat 6A mission, landing of the first stage booster. Obviously, the mission not over until they deploy the satellite on behalf of their customer, KTSat. That being said, preparations, of course, will underway for the launch of another mission here in Florida, that being the Starlink 6-69 mission. Was intended to launch yesterday, but fortunately, best laid plans and all that. Liftoff currently targeting 4:02 p.m. Eastern. That launch window extends out to 7:44 p.m. Eastern if needed. You can see that Falcon 9 rocket standing over at Space Launch Complex 40, or Slick 40. They're at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, looking to send up a batch of 24 Starlink satellites. Just the second time that SpaceX is launching 24 of the V2 mini variety of Starlinks. SpaceX did so once, not too terribly long ago, but then went back to launching 23 V2 minis apiece. That first launch of 24 V2 minis was back in February with the Starlink 6-39 mission. Now T plus 19 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. A little less than 10 minutes away from the second stage burn. You can see from the live telemetry data, the Falcon 9's upper stage is beginning to make its way towards the coast of Western Africa. Like it's going to be passing just a little bit north over the tip of Senegal. Again, the second stage burn coming up around T plus 28 minutes. The weather for this afternoon's Starlink flight should be pretty much a continuation of what we're seeing right now. Some clouds hanging out in the area, but the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 80% chance of favorable weather conditions at liftoff, with the cumulus clouds being the only potential watch item as far as liftoff. The booster recovery weather is listed as moderate, though, for tonight or for this afternoon. The booster recovery weather was what SpaceX said prevented them from launching yesterday. So, with a moderate outlook today, we'll have to wait and see if they feel like they're in a good enough position, if conditions have improved enough to support the launch of this batch of 24 Starlink satellites. Falcon 9 booster supporting this afternoon's Starlink mission, about half the age as far as number of launches compared to the booster that we just saw touch down over at LZ1. Booster launching Starlink 6-69 mission is B1080, lifting off for just its 12th time. Time of the mission now T plus 23 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. As we are continuing to wait for the next few minutes before the second upper stage burn, I want to thank a few more folks for their support for our live coverage this afternoon. Our thanks to Patty Chichil for a $2 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members who says, "Thank you, Spaceflight Now and the mods. Always great." Thank you, Patty. Good to see you this afternoon. Sulfur for Lunch, another channel member with a 100 SEK super chat. Really appreciate that, Sulfur. Appreciate the generosity. Who says, "Thank you to everyone out there who makes these wonderful live streams possible. All the mods for their hard work. All rock." Beverly Knuckles marking 4 months with us as a channel member. Glad to have you stick around, Beverly. Who says, "Better late than never." Reviewing now. Bravo all. Yes, you can always head on back through the live chat or through the live stream if you happen to miss the launch replay, or if you want to go ahead and check it out later on at your own convenience. Of course, this stream will be up as a video. Finally, for now, I want to thank Larry Grove for joining us with the channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Larry. Glad to have you with us. Now T plus 25 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. A little more than 2 minutes away from the second stage burn. Want to go ahead and share some of the photos of this mission captured by one of our eighth photographers, Michael Kane. A nice image, the moment of liftoff, with, of course, Old Glory there in the foreground. Another nice flag shot. Of course, the timing would just be that, where you got the nice flag shot set up, the lighting is great, and of course the wind happens to dip down right at the point where we wanted to pick up the flag and stretch it across the Falcon 9 rocket for a nice transit shot, but can't always have the best luck. If you like these photos and want to go ahead and find them at your own convenience, you can follow at Michael. He is over at MD Kane Jr. on X, formerly Twitter. Standing by for the call out for the second stage burn.
An awesome view of the MVAC, which has now lit up for its second burn. In total, this burn should last about a minute until we have SECO 2. And with that call out, we have second engine cutoff, or SECO 2, and we're now just a few minutes away from payload deploy. Our customer
Seeing some views now of the KoreaSat 6A satellite. Payload set to deploy in just a few minutes here, T plus 34 minutes and 35 seconds. As we are waiting deployment of the KoreaSat 6A satellite, want to share one more photo with you. It's an image of launch liftoff from the photographer Adam Bernstein as the Falcon 9 rocket began its ascent, lifting off from Launch Complex 39A. You can find Adam's work over on his X account, ABurnNYC. Now T plus 32 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. Just a couple minutes now until deployment of the KoreaSat 6A satellite. Now less than a minute to the deployment of the satellite. Standing by for payload deployment.
KoreaSat 6A deploy confirmed.
And with that, you can see the satellite now flying free and off to geostationary transfer orbit. As we begin to go ahead and close things out, we'll go ahead and hang with these views of the satellite as it's cruising off until it's no longer visible. And then we'll go ahead and turn our attention to the mission stats from this flight. And as SpaceX commentator noted on the tail end of their commentary, we do have the Starlink mission coming up tonight, so certainly an encouraging sign that they brought it up, suggesting that they will go ahead and move forward with the launch attempt, hopefully at the beginning of the window. But of course, we'll keep you posted on that, taking a live look out at Pad 40 right now. With that, let's go ahead and round things out with our let's go ahead and proceed with our mission stats. They currently stand. now with a good deployment of the KoreaSat 6A satellite. This marked the 23rd flight of Falcon 9 booster 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. This was the 392nd Falcon 9 launch to date, the 107th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 337th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 109th orbital launch of the year so far, including 2 Falcon Heavy missions. The 123rd orbital launch within the last 365 days. This was also the 92nd orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 39A, and the 186th overall orbital launch from this historic pad. Take a look at the bar chart version of the numbers here for Falcon family launches. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 47th booster landing at LZ1, marking the 58th time a booster has touched down in the Sunshine State successfully, and the 79th land landing, marking the 365th overall SpaceX booster landing. Finally, with some industry stats, this marked the 77th orbital launch from Florida this year, the 116th launch from U.S. soil, the 127th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, and the 209th orbital launch attempt globally. Had a launch from China earlier today that bumped up the numbers just before this mission went a little bit earlier today. And so here's a look at where the pie chart now currently stands. US 127 missions on the year, China with 54, Russia with 12, Japan with 6, India and Iran with 3 apiece, European Space Agency with 2, and North Korea with 1 launch attempt and a launch failure. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here for now. Again, SpaceX looking to launch one more Falcon 9 rocket later on this afternoon. First, want to thank the folks behind the scenes here with this launch. Our thanks, as always, to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Key Productions, Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Our thanks to our wonderful moderators in the live chat, Callistia Lee, Aussie Space Girl, and Rusty Shackelford. Want to thank our wonderful photography team of Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane for tracking and shooting the rocket as it made its flight up and booster return back down. Our thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. And most of all, thanks to you for wherever you are watching from today. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon. If you do have the day off for Veterans Day, hope you're having a relaxing day and finding an opportunity to thank a veteran for their service. And to all the veterans in our audience today, we appreciate what you've done for our country here in the United States. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, coming up real soon. And until then, bye-bye.